Welcome to Channel's Book Club. I am Olakule Kasumo. There are many stories of writers and creators of all forms of art paying ultimate prices to produce works that outlive them and provide knowledge, pleasure, and joy for the rest of us. While those stories put many of the works we enjoy in proper perspectives, they are often not told well enough. Reginald Ofodile is a writer, poet, and actor who has experienced it all. One of his latest books, From Sin to Splendor, recently won the 2016 Anna Abubakar Gimba Prize for short stories. Reginald joins us to share his thoughts on the often very difficult life of a writer. But before then, we engaged him on his new award-winning collection of short stories, From Sin to Pleasure. Reginald, thank you for joining us on Channel's Book Club again.
Thank you for having me.
And congrats on your book has won the Association of Nigerian Authors Abubakar Gimba Prize 2016.
It has indeed. Thank you.
Congrats. The Anna Prize has been around for quite a long time, hasn't it?
Anna Prizes have been around since the 80s. Anna celebrated its 35th anniversary this year, from 1981. And Anna's been giving prizes since the 80s. Yes.
And I guess it inspired the other prizes that we have today, like the Nigeria Prize for Literature, the Etisalat Prize for Literature, and so on. I guess so.
That's interesting to hear. I don't know. That's interesting.
Okay. So, From Sin to Splendor won you this prize.
Indeed.
What's the book about?
The book is about a number of protagonists. It's a book of 9 stories, and it spans over a century. So the first story, the title story, From Sin to Splendor, has a protagonist whose journey was literally from sin to splendor, from shame to fame, from disgrace to celebrity. And it's set in a colonial riverside community over a century ago. And you have a number of other stories. And it concludes with a story set in contemporary Lagos called Mark of a Man, the one I read from.
Okay, how about the title, Sin to Splendor? How did you come up with that? Why did you come up with that?
Quite unusual. You'd expect one to move from sin to disgrace to disintegration to extinction, possibly. But that unusual experience was the lot of my protagonist. She offended her community. She was ostracized. She was like vermin. She lived downtown by the riverside with a foreigner, becoming the pillar of the house, the reject becoming the
chief cornerstone.
The chief cornerstone, the strength, the support, the source of glory. And it's fiction, of course, but life's like that sometimes, quite often.
I know you churn out a number of, you write a lot, prose, poetry, and so on. How do you manage to do this? It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but it's, if not always pleasurable, how do I put it? I don't need urging or prodding to do it. I just do it. The stories in that collection were written over a 20-year period. From Sin to Splendor, I think, was written in about 1994, and the last story there was written in 2013. So it's a lot of work, but I just find myself doing it. There was a time years ago when I carried a sports bag and had piles of scrap paper in the bag, and about 4 pens, biros, ballpoint pens, and I'd sit in unusual places and scribble. And how does Lady Macbeth put it? The labour we delight in, physics pain, in Shakespeare's Macbeth. The labour that we delight in, physics pain, it cures pain, it effaces or soothes pain.
So that's what it does for you.
I suppose it is. I suppose it is.
You writers often don't make a lot of money from these works, do you?
No.
Yet for you it's an art. It's a passion, a mission. Or is that a wrong perception?
No, it's not. It's not. You know, in Western art, it's a cliche that it takes poverty to make an artist. And it's absolutely true. There may be some exceptions, but they're only exceptions. To be absorbed in creativity distances you from reality, and people who are prosperous are very realistic. They're engaged with life, and quite often we step away from it, we look away from it, we are absorbed in our visions, and we pay a price. Oh, definitely. I've gone through a lot in the course of my creative life. I've experienced unaccustomed hardship.
So what keeps you going? What keeps you producing?
I just feel like doing it. And rather than have some sort of secure job where I'd live in a mansion and have virtually unlimited wealth, I do this and struggle and eat from roadside hawkers.
It reminds me of a guest I had recently who calls writing a calling.
It's a calling for,
I
think, for most of us, for true writers. It's a vocation. I had occasion to say to a colleague and friend years ago, and he keeps remembering it, I said to him, we have to be masochists to do what we do. And that's true. And for me, there's no choice, really. There's no option. I just have to do it. And
this is not very inspiring for the young man or young woman out there today, who live in a very materialistic world.
Oh, definitely. I think I'd be doing a service to the young man or woman by telling how grim the reality of the writing life is. They might see me on channels chatting to Diakule Kasumu, and everything seems pleasant, but behind the book, behind a lot of work, just behind the book lies tears, heartache, hardship, scorn.
In a country or in a clime where art and literature don't seem to be very much appreciated, that makes it more difficult, doesn't it?
It makes it more difficult, but it's not true to think it's much easier or much better in the Western world. It isn't. You hear of the few people who are lauded, who are acclaimed. For the vast, vast majority, it's a grim struggle. Definitely. And I suppose it's even worse for people in the plastic arts, people who draw and paint. You'd hear of somebody who starved to death, and centuries later their works would fetch tens of millions of pounds at Sotheby's. That's the reality of it.
Is the hope of such an experience, you know, the merits of doing what you do, and other artists doing what they do, or is there more? Is there something that some young man out there, you know, should find inspiring, motivating?
Yes, and again, it's for the creator, not for the public, usually. There is satisfaction, there is a thrill in looking at a certain sentence and feeling, I got that right, well crafted. And you have accolades, sometimes you have acclaim, you have people encouraging you, complimenting you, reading your work. It's like being in more than one place at a time. There are pleasant moments, but I would be doing the aspiring writer a disservice if I didn't say that in the main, it's a grim struggle, definitely. And of course, in so many cases, publishers would turn you down. That's another story. They'd say your work is not ready, it's not what they want. The more polite ones, the majority would simply ignore you. And of course, if you win an NLNG prize, those publishers would clamor for your work. That's the other side of it.
Reginald, it's been nice having you on the Channels Book Club, and once again, congrats on From Scene to Splendor.
Thank you so very much.
Award. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
That's on the reading.